Greetings, everyone. Um, Please feel free to comment on whichever social media channel you're on. You can ask questions as well as we go through this. So feel free to let us know which part of the world you're in, and maybe just leave a question as well if you got some question on this. Today we're going to be talking about executive agility, and we're going to be looking at a unique perspective on executive agility and how we can help to unlock executive agility to help unlock organizational agility. So let's go through it and welcome your comments as we go along. So one of the first things that we need to talk about is what are the most significant barriers to adopting and scaling agile practices in your current organization. Digital.ai, they do this survey every couple of years, and these percentages are from the 15th state of Agile report, and 43% where they're saying organizational culture is at odds with Agile values, 42% general organizational resistance to change, 42% lack of skills or experience with Agile, not enough leadership participation, inadequate management support and sponsorship, and insufficient training and education. So these are well-established reasons, according to the State of Agile report, and it seems to come up every couple of years, pretty much telling the same story, slightly different percentages, but pretty much the same story. So my perspective with executive agility is that if you think you can buy agile in a box or agility in a box, that's really not how you're going to get sustainable results. I like what Pia Maria Thorian said one day to me when I was interviewing her on my podcast, Xagility podcast, and she pretended she had a flower pot in front of her and she said, "Grow, flower, grow." Of course, the flower isn't going to grow from being told how to grow. So agility needs fertile soil to grow in. And my hypothesis is that a missing piece of the puzzle of authentic, sustainable organizational agility is the lack of executive agility. So this is really about how can we help executives to move forward in terms of behaving in such a way that agility is much more likely. So what is executive agility? It's cultivating a humane environment for the sustainable flow of value from customer and data informed people. Happy people leading to happy customers. And it helps executives get more successful, be more useful and valuable. Not only should executives try to behave differently so that they can unleash more agility in the organization, but they can also unleash their own legacy as well. Maybe not only would you go through what I'm suggesting we go through today, but your reports would also go through this, because what happens quite often is even if you do make progress with organizational agility on your watch, is that going to fall apart as soon as you move on? How much have your reports, your potential successors, be prepared for this journey? And with executive agility, you stop doing some things, life actually gets simpler. And we try to connect strategy with reality and let strategy evolve. And leaders will emerge at all levels in the organization. So Xagility is an executive agility framework based on 5 years of interviews and experiments, including leading executives. And it's a set of hypotheses of what to do differently and how. And each hypothesis must be tested in your context. We're not offering recipes here because we're not selling Agile in a box. But we can help to look at the data and suggest the next experiments for you. You can essentially choose your own path for your organization and for yourself as an executive. So if you want to really unleash executive agility, We need to stop some behaviors and start some new ones. And we need to record the results of our experiments. This is important because we need to be agile about becoming agile, and we need to learn. We need to use evidence to help us decide what will work best in your context. There are 5 key areas where executive agility can be unleashed, and one of them is in creating a humane environment. Another one is in terms of how you make decisions and how you deal with value and delivery of value. Happy people can lead to happy customers. And you cannot really talk about agility without talking about flow. These are all well and good, but an executive needs to demonstrate a really good mood set, as Tim Wiggum would say. They need to be the change, and you can't be kind of going around with slumpy shoulders when you're supposed to be an agent of change. And as Marshall Goldsmith would put it, it's not about not being authentic, it's about being a professional. And so to sustain that, you need to also work on your energy levels. How are you maintaining your energy so that through bad times and good times, you can maintain that change energy, because it is a tough journey. It's not an easy journey, not for the faint-hearted. So I thought about how these might work together, and I thought about them working together as cogs, but really it's more about flowers in a meadow, really. And I'm sure there will be more areas that we'll discover later on. The thing is that aha moments are not enough. And I used to think, as recently as a few years ago, that all we need is for you as the executive to have a eureka moment, to realize that particular behaviors are causing issues for agility, and that all we need to do is to change them. Of course, changing behavior isn't that simple. Losing weight isn't simple. Changing your diet isn't simple. Starting an exercise regime. Change is difficult, whether it's in your own life or whether it's to do with agility. It's just that when you're dealing with the organization, it has a much bigger impact. And it's all very well for you to intellectually get something, but really what I need to see, and what other agility chefs need to see, would be that you're doing something about it. And this journey is what we're going to talk about today. We also need to discover the triggers of the behaviors and find different responses to those particular behaviors. So it's really messy. It's not like we can lay out the chess pieces. It's not like we can say, if we do all these things, everything's going to be great. The engagement model for Xagility essentially works in 30 to 90-day cycles, where we try to decide what we're going to do next. We're also open to the idea of a more evolutionary approach, but essentially you get offered a set of potential deliverables from that 30 to 90-day time period, and then we decide what to do next, and what we want to do next. What did we learn from our previous experiments, and what would be the next right things to do. With regards to the humane environment, an aha moment is the mental readiness for the deletion of a behavior that prevents or counteracts authentic organizational agility. And deletion implies let's have less stories like this. So when I say hit delete, I guess I really mean let's replace some behaviors, because when you delete things, you can leave a vacuum. So when you see something in red, it means that it's a behavior that we might want to remove. And if you see something in green, it's an indication of a potential replacement for a deleted behavior that supports authentic agility. And we're kind of saying, let's have more behaviors like the green ones and less like the red ones. So if we look at an example, one that I saw in the last 12 months actually was where I had a really agile leader who was doing wonderful things and was really helping his team to do good things. In fact, they were actually leading the organization in terms of what was possible. They were experimenting approaches with regard to agile and experimentation and discovery that weren't being done in the rest of the organization. But because there was a rotation policy, there was a decision to rotate somebody else in from another area, another part of the world, and while I'm sure the whoever the previous agile leader went to, I'm sure he helped their world no end. We had a massive regression with the team that was making lots of progress. So instead of maybe promoting the old guard, maybe if we want to really show how serious we are about agility, maybe we already need to be recruiting and promoting with agility in mind. We do have some tests available where you can assess how agile the new executive is compared to what was there before. Although we don't really like comparing, but certainly assessing where that person is now and are they really ready? Because whatever about tolerance for people who don't really believe in agility at a team level, at an executive level, there needs to be almost zero tolerance for promoting people who are really just exhibiting the old mindset. That's if the organization is serious about agility. What you'll notice as well on this, it kind of looks like a clock. You'll see numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And essentially, the idea is that some behaviors are quite difficult to achieve. The higher the number, the more difficult to remove, the more difficult to replace, and the lower the number, the more basic the behavior that maybe needs replacing. But basic behavior changes can actually make big differences. Getting even past steps 1 and steps 2 here can lead to major progress in an organization. So this is really important because what can happen is even people who've got very good appetite for agility, lots of curiosity, doing wonderful things, they acquire what Jim Benson calls learned helplessness, where they're really powerful normally, but because they've been trying for say 18 months or so to do everything to make progress, what has ended up happening is no progress has been made, and they feel like they just need to kind of give up pretty much. And so when we promote or recruit non-agile leaders, it really does cause problems. There are lots of others. I won't go through them all. There's a whole e-learning program on all of these. Ruthlessness with people is something that we might want to replace with ruthlessness with value later on. And you can see the progression there in terms of what kind of behaviors we need to look for. Here are some positive behaviors. These will be ones that we'd like to replace the less helpful behaviors with. So, for example, discovering what people value, also discovering what frustrates people. But a little health warning on that one, because if there isn't the psychological safety to talk about what frustrates people, that might be a dangerous thing to ask, or people might not feel that they can ask that, or that the information will be kept and respected and dealt with appropriately. So we had to be careful about that. I was told once in a room of about 50 people that we were all psychologically safe in this room. And in that moment, I think we all understood that we were not psychologically safe in that room. So really creating space where that happens. You can see there leading from the backstage, keeping on asking what frustrates people, but actually doing something about it as well. Because in one measurement case study that I did in 2019, over a 9-month period, what I discovered was that employees knew, or they were confident that you knew as an executive what the problems were, and they were just as confident that you're going to do something about it. But 9 months later, only 20% of those people were as confident that you were actually going to do anything about it. So you had to be careful about being serious about really fixing problems, not just about going around and applauding people at sprint reviews and things like that. Actually, really trying to declutter, simplify workflows, processes, and systems as well later on as things get much more agile. There's a kind of a progression here, but you can choose your own path really. But what we notice is, for example, some behaviors, if you try to do them too early, you might cause issues. For example, flexible working, can you really do that when we haven't got the basics sorted? I don't know. Some people are trying. Is it just a fad, or are they serious about this flexible working? So yeah, so these are some positive behaviors to create a humane environment. Some of the principles that go underneath these numbers within humane environments. So, can we be transparent about delegation levels? That's a hat tip to Management 3.0 from Jürgen Appello. Can we consult teams instead of making decisions for them? And can we give trust? Can we give respect as well? Can we consider behavior when deciding on placements? Can we be ruthless with value but compassionate with people? Can we make sure that we got the right people in the right seats on the bus? We've got the right people on the bus and they're in the right seats on the bus. And if we can't go with stable teaming, can we do dynamic reteaming in an authentic way? One of the very early impediments to true agility in an organization is the lack of a horizontal growth path for people. What I notice a lot is people intellectually get, for example, in Kanban that they need to stop starting and start finishing, but they still step on top of each other without an environment where there's horizontal growth available. And it needs to be available right across the entire company, because if it's not, what happens is you'll be seen as naive to be part of a program that as soon as you get rotated out or moved to another part of the company, it's not there, you're now at a disadvantage. So the only way is up, actually, and you haven't been playing that game to step up, so you could be at a disadvantage. And so that's crucial that we have horizontal growth. So you can grow horizontally, improve your financial position, improve your status in the company, not necessarily by going up, but actually by going sideways, by learning more skills, more flexible people leading to more flexible teams, and teams of teams leading to more flexible organization. Maybe we can turn on a dime for a dime and really do wonderful things together. Oh, once we usually get some flow going as well, can we think about 80-20? Because we discover quite quickly that there's limited capacity, and there's no shortage of ideas, of course. And maybe we can be more simplistic about, not simplistic, but maybe we can simplify how we can achieve the same outcomes with less outputs. So in our company here in Orderly Disruption, we have some outcomes, and we have various organizational needles that need to move. And we talk about how can we minimize the outputs to deliver those outcomes. And also, can we have regular aporia, which is where you're kind of regularly checking in. Are we actually responding correctly? Is this the right problem to solve right now? And we should always have diversity and inclusion, but is it authentic? How much greenwashing is there as well from a sustainability point of view? Do we really have authentic respect in the organization and timely conversations when there are some performance issues? So there's lots of progression here in terms of creating a humane environment, and a lot of these themes, they interact with each other, so you can't just do them on their own. And as an executive, you need to find your own path. Of course, with Xagility, we have an e-learning and podcast program for you to progress through that, and workshops also. But these are the principles of a humane environment. So if we look at some of these cogs then, and then think about the next theme, if you like, which is essentially how can we improve how we make decisions. And so with value and decision making, remember again, the red text is to do with behaviors we'd like to replace, and the green text behavior that we'd like to maybe replace those old behaviors with. It's not linear, it's context dependent as well, so we have to rerun these experiments in your environment as well. So if I take an example, this is something that I only discovered a couple of years ago, and I was kind of shocked when I saw this. Essentially, the game was that nothing is agreed until we see it in the minutes of a meeting. And that really caused problems, because I saw people really suffer from this, where they thought that a number of executives agreed to something, and the person who thought that ended up suffering career-wise as well. And actually, the game was, let's massage the minutes before they come out, because what's agreed is actually what's in the minutes, not what we said, but not what we said in the meeting. And my position on that is, at the last climate change conference, they could agree. I mean, a lot of people arguing, with unhealthy conflict at that conference, but they still managed to agree the minutes, and this is what we agreed as in terms of what's going forward. And surely, as part of a meeting, as part of the agenda for the last 10 minutes, 15 minutes, even 20 minutes, writing down what the minutes are, what have we agreed, so that we have transparency about what's agreed, and that changes everything, because then what we're going to get is conflict, which is what we need, conflict, but hopefully healthy conflict about what the right thing is to do, rather than being everyone's friend and pretending to agree to everything but actually agreeing to nothing. Quite a cynical game, and that's a real sign of a toxic environment. Very difficult to achieve agility in such an environment. So this is a behavior that you need to help us to remove. If you see this, just your little nudge would be, can we, instead of having it circulating the minutes afterwards, can we get the minutes agreed now, and can we just agree all the wording right now? It can save a lot of time, actually. Lots of other ones that we might want to get rid of, like making decisions with perfect information. So you're sending people off again and again and again. Maybe making internal demands, fixed price, fixed scope. Maybe being a bit too passive about risk, and maybe making data less decisions. Making decisions without data. If you're really an agile leader, you should be making data informed decisions. So looking at evidence, maybe looking at customer analytics, maybe also looking at flow analytics, but not being a slave to the data, maybe also asking questions. Because a lot of the time customers do complain about things. Some people do like to complain about things, and at the end of the day, they do actually have a satisfactory workaround. So that even though they might complain about certain things, there's other things that might actually want more. So we need to be better at asking our customers questions about what they really want, and how we can really help them solve their problems. So these would be some of the unhelpful behaviors you'd want to replace. And these would be some more positive ones. Disagree and commit is where you the most recent example of that I had was where, as an executive group, we agreed that 70% of us agreed we'd disagree but commit. Even if the other 30% disagreed, we still proceeded and we committed. That helped us to move forward with imperfect information. And also, what I noticed was that some people who were disagreeing were actually relieved, because they were disagreeing not because they disagreed themselves, but because of political influence outside the room that felt they had to disagree. So, or sorry, yeah. So, yeah, this is something you need to watch out for. Lots of other positive ones as well. Like, for example, we need to get rid of blockers for teams. So that means you need to be looking at what those blockers are, and you need to have really good reason codes for those, so you can have actionable outcomes. You can say, okay, why is that happening so often? What are we doing about that? I had an example a year ago where work has been sent to a third party that was not fit for purpose, and it was happening all the time. It was coming up as a reason code on the electronic tool, and I was told it was solved. And then when I looked at the data again in September, it was still a problem. So I call that a boomerang, an impediment boomerang. So we also need to be watching out for impediment boomerangs. We're being told that stuff being solved is actually not solved. It's just a little plaster on top of the problem, not really solving the problem. Okay. So some principles behind value and decision making. Can we decide with imperfect information? Can we stick the course until quantitative and qualitative evidence tells us otherwise? Can we be proactive about delivery risk and uncertainty? Can we have a direction of travel and be proactive with diversity of thought, and have measures and countermeasures, and maybe optimize our flight routes or our value streams? Flight route is a kind of a better way of finding out where work is flowing to the system than value stream, in my opinion, and giving trust to long-term suppliers and teams as well. As we get more agile, having more frequent budget cycles, doing more discovery, not just delivery, doing discovery to not deliver, to actually discover stuff that you should not deliver, and descaling, as in we might need more teams, but how can we simplify workflows, processes, and systems? So making data-formed decisions, having backstage leadership, and helping teams with stakeholder management for leaders who are less evolved than you in terms of their agility. Because sometimes, even though your peers might be saying they're okay with something, when your reports actually try to interact with your peers, they're getting a lot of pushback, and it's because they're not seen as important by these less evolved people who you're working with. So this is something that needs to be worked on as well. You need to support them with that. You can see more advanced ones as well as you go along. So one being the lower level, and then when you get up to 6, it's a really high level of agility in terms of value and decision making. So if we look at the next theme, which is essentially happy people, happy customers. Again, the red text is behaviors that need to be deleted. Green text is behaviors that we need to replace those with. And so what would be one example of happy people, happy customers? Well, maybe instead of expecting people to bring dashboards to you, maybe you need to walk around regularly and listen and really listen. And I mean walking around really regularly, so regularly that there is no real kind of formal preparation for you turning up. People aren't putting up posters in front of you. It's not like a royal tour. You come around so regularly that it's actually easier to just be transparent and tell the truth about what's going on, because it just takes too much energy to keep pretending that there are no problems, because sometimes teams do not want to tell you there are problems because they have this perception that because they haven't solved it themselves, that you might not see them as performing as well. But actually you need to be aware of what the problems are and you need to really listen to that. So that's one example, and not just visiting teams, but also visiting customers and end users as well, doing quite a lot of that, really finding out what's going on, not just looking at these wonderful dashboards that you've got about Net Promoter Score and so on. I mean, I've got a wonderful Net Promoter Score, 84, which is really cool. But I like to talk to customers and find out what's really going on. And maybe that pretty Net Promoter Score isn't so pretty when I talk to my customers. That also means, by the way, not just talking to your customers and talking to your teams, but also maybe witnessing interactions with your customers. If you have call centers, for example, maybe take a leaf out of the Vanguard Methods book where you put on your headphones and listen to calls. You might be shocked by the experiences that some of your customers are having. Like, for example, someone being told that an app is telling a customer that she doesn't know how to spell her own name, which is something that would frustrate a customer. And so these are things that you need to be kind of watching out for. Some other examples of negative behaviors. Project teams. Projects aren't bad, but having project teams, unless the project is really long term, it suffers from a few things. Number one, the Tuckman model, which is still not invalid according to the Oxford Review. So forming, storming, norming, performing apparently happens in marriage, in groups, in teams, and some groups are better at teaming than others, so they go through those phases much quicker. But there's usually forming, storming, norming, performing. So basically, in the ramp up of your project, if you've got a dedicated Scrum team, for example, and you ramp them up for that project, part of that time is them just bedding in as a team. And if you've got a fixed date in front of you, which I don't recommend, by the way, but if you did, that would mean that there's going to be a lot of pressure for weird kind of technical practices and a situation where the team is still trying to norm. Also, there's the change curve, or the J curve is known of, which is also still not invalid according to Oxford Review. And basically, when we want to improve our performance from here to here, it's not a straight journey like that. Essentially, there's a dip. Actually, things get worse before they get better, and that's kind of with any change. You can make those J curves, those change curves, smaller, but if you have a project team and they do have a fixed date in front of them, and they're going through the forming, storming, and performing, they're going through the J curve, that's problematic. And add on top of that, that it kind of leads to this belief that all we need to do is add more project teams and we have unlimited scale and we can just scale our way out of any problem. We can outsource our way out of any problem. And actually, there's usually a few people in our company that we're all depending on. There's usually some bottleneck somewhere. There's almost always a bottleneck. I think I nearly say there is always a bottleneck. I say nearly because I can't think of an example where there isn't. And just because you're at a bottleneck doesn't mean you're a bad person or anything. There's always a bottleneck. I think if there wasn't, we'd have unlimited capacity. So what can happen is we keep on adding on those teams, and so they're going through the forming, storming, non performing, and they're going through the change curve, and they got this going on as well. So it's quite problematic. And add on top of all of that, how much will is there likely to be in a project that's lasting 9 months to fix big organizational problems that might take 2 years? So lots of problems. You can feed projects to product teams or to customer job teams. You can do that. You can barcode If you use backlogs, you could barcode the backlogs with project teams. But as you get more and more agile, you might not use backlogs at all. Actually, you might just go to the customer and say, "What do you want next?" In Kanban and Vanguard method, that idea is supported where you don't have any backlog because that's just seeing it as another queue. But on your way there, what happens in lots of organizations, they go from project to product, and even product isn't the be all and end all either, because some customer jobs where the customer wants to give us money, that there's money on the table, the customer wants to give us money, but we're not taking it because actually it doesn't fit the agenda of our product group. So we have to be careful with that as well. But any hint of lack of technical excellence at some point, that needs to be. Shouldn't you always be doing these things? Shouldn't you do all of these? I'm just trying to be reasonable about when is the last moment at which you cannot, you cannot keep doing this because it's going to cause too many problems. Targets as well. Why not go look at trends and not targets? And instead of having new leadership positions, maybe leadership happens at every level. Here's some of the more helpful ones. So helping individuals to be successful, walking around, having product teams, see what difference outputs make. So if you have Kanban boards, for example, maybe adding a column on at the end, measure and tweak. Did that output make a difference? You'd be amazed how often people don't actually check. Talking to customers, smaller outputs, maybe helping flight routes and value streams to be successful. So thinking more end to end, not just in teams. Agility is not a team sport. According to Klaus Leopold, it's a company sport. It's an organizational sport. And having technical coaches, mobbing, swarming, or now they say ensemble is the latest expression. Maybe instead of having layer of cake teams, maybe we have slice of cake teams or problem solving teams. And having more congruent purpose and so on and so forth. As you get more agile, the behaviors become more difficult to attain. So some of the principles that underpin happy people, happy customers. Removing complacency with regard to improvement. You'd be amazed how often I see clients where actually they think they don't need to improve. Everything's fine. And I don't know, like really, how can you be agile if you think you can't improve? I mean, that's like a fairly basic one. Having conversations with people. I mean, it seems fairly basic, but a lot of the time as an executive, you might be just broadcasting. You might not think you're not. Even if you're doing these town halls, you think you're talking to people, but are you going around actually really talking to people? And I have this expression, better to have a hole than an a-hole. I hope you know what I mean by that. Maybe instead of imposing agility approaches on people, maybe you invite people, give them some options. Maybe having end-to-end product teams, maybe looking at the narrative, maybe doing some sense making, maybe doing some storytelling, designing smaller bets, and improving your technical excellence and cultivating leadership, the kind of leadership that we're looking for, not just yourself, but actually cultivating leadership of the people who will be coming in behind you. Because I think actually everyone in your organization will need to see what you're learning and what you're unlearning. So we don't have kind of cross purposes when we're talking to each other. And then moving on, of course, you cannot talk about agility without talking about flow. And so in terms of flow, we're talking about Kanban type flow here. So stop starting, start finishing, or what Jim Benson would say, focus and finish. And so again, trying to replace some less positive behaviors with some more positive ones. And so an example would be, can we stop trying to keep people busy all the time? And instead, maybe, can we focus on a thing called work item aging, which is something you might need to learn about as an executive. You can do a basic Kanban simulation called Twig. Your agile coach will be able to run it with you, I'm sure. And within 1 hour, 1 hour, 20 minutes, you'll have a very good idea what charts you can use to help you make decisions at every level of your organization, at objective level, at kind of project initiative level, work item level within the team. You can help to improve the flow by focusing on not letting work get old. And to kind of tell you a little story about that, I have less chance now at the age of 54. I have less chance now of becoming 85 than I will have if I reach 84. The older you get, the statistically more likely you will get older. I could drop dead tomorrow, or when I'm 84 years of age and 1 day old. but statistically speaking, the older you get, the more older you're likely to get. So if you let your work get older, the more likely it is to get older. We'll have horrible long cycle times, or some people might call them lead times or flow times. And when those flow times get longer and longer and longer, it means next week when you ask people how long things going to take, they're going to say, I don't know, it's getting longer and longer. And so the throughput, how many items, how many work items, or how many initiatives, or how many objectives that are being moved, that will eventually flatten and go down if you're not on top of aging. And of course, to get on top of aging, you need to unblock work, because one of the big causes of aging is work that's blocked, and people are almost getting apathetic about, oh, it's blocked. It's like, it's like when I see a blocked column, that kind of drives me nuts, because it's kind of a sign that we get blocked so often. We just made a blocked column. I mean, just mark it as blocked where it is. um I'd love if you had a situation where your work really bled down, but sometimes people kind of focus too much on finishing, and they forget about feeding this feeding the machine, if you like. Feeding, I shouldn't say feeding the machine, feeding the system, because you can actually let the system starve as well if you're not careful. So try to focus on finishing work or canceling work. If you've got too much work in the system, really challenge whether even be careful with the sunk cost fallacy. Have a look at some work that's in the system that isn't finished, and do we need to finish it actually? Because have we missed from a timing point of view, have we missed the opportunity to really avail of that? And actually, should we just cancel that, so we just free up the system so we can focus on other things? There are lots of negative behaviors in relation to flow, like push, for example. I'm not saying never push. I mean, sometimes you will push because of some regulation or whatever. Um, but more often than not, you should let the team pull. You should say, this is really important. Here it is. I'm offering it. And then the team will pull it away when they've got the capacity, is the idea. So instead of saying what you're going to do in the next quarter, one major bit of progress they made in the last year or so was getting it across to an executive that your throughput is your capacity. That's a bit oversimplistic, but at an executive level, it's kind of a simple message to get across. Everybody kind of gets the idea that, if you delivered, I don't know, if you're a project organization, you delivered 24 projects this quarter last year, why do you think you could do 52 this year? Did you increase the number of people? And even if you did, are we really going to get that many more projects for more people? Because when you have more people, you don't necessarily linearly get more outputs either. So when you say you're prioritizing, can you prioritize within the capacity? Because that's really what prioritizing is. Prioritization, as far as I'm concerned, is about deciding about what you're not going to do as an organization, not just giving a ranked list that's still too long. Okay, and lots of other ones like big bets is the norm. I'm not saying never have a big bet, but it's putting a lot of risk there, and kind of moving away from better, faster, cheaper to, can we be more adaptive? Can we be more responsive to what's going on in the market? Here are some positive behaviors in relation to the flow of value. So can we visualize all of the valuable work, for example? Can we split, when we're splitting work, can we make sure the work is still valuable? Can we do 9 minutes learning at 9 a.m. so that we're not just suffering in terms of not thinking about flow, and we're learning more about flow? Can we encourage useful interactions that are really valuable? These kind of meetings you might have, like stand-ups or reviews or retrospectives, can we review how meaningful they are for people? Can we get a common understanding of how the work flows? Can we try to manage expectations about uncertainty? Can we discover to not deliver? Lots of behaviors that we need to put in there to replace some of the ones that you'd be removing to make it a really good environment. Better flow means better delivery of value, means you can really be more responsive as an organization, and it's happening on your watch as an executive. So some of the principles for flow value: prioritize within capacity, automate where possible, maybe being more aware of waste impact, blockers, for example, helping teams to unblock, focus, and finish. Maybe provide a direction of travel for the team, so the organization can kind of pull in a direction. They're really selecting work. It's kind of a tongue-in-cheek saying pull. Can you help teams to fix problems? Can you reduce the amount of work in their system by really prioritizing within their capacity? And can we up our game at discovery? Can we get a bit more humble about what we think different initiatives are going to achieve? and maybe do some experiments to discover, and maybe we've got the wrong people in mind, maybe the wrong thinking styles, maybe it's the wrong problem to solve, maybe it's not the right problem right now, maybe there's a better problem to focus on, and can we improve our effectiveness? But ultimately, we want to reduce waste. We want to declutter the environment, so the environment is more adaptive. And of course, efficiency isn't a bad word. Kanban does really help you to improve your efficiency. We just want to focus maybe on effectiveness a bit more when we're in the complex space, in my opinion. And these are all fine and well, but unless you have the energy levels to deal with this, we're really going to struggle with you making progress with these behavior replacements. And so, given that it's messy and all that, I'm going to just show you a few things that you can look at in terms of how do we improve the energy, so that you can be a really inspiring and inspired change agent and inspired executive for your people. Again, we've got the negative behaviors and the ones that we want to replace with the more positive behaviors. And the numbers are progressing in terms of more agile as you go along. And this is a fairly obvious one that I'm guilty of myself. I'm not perfect either, and I struggle with some of these things. So when I'm traveling, sometimes do I eat a little bit too much fast food when I'm traveling? It's kind of like quite convenient to kind of just go in and get a quick meal, but not getting much nutrition, and then taking synthetic supplements instead of the ones that are natural. And maybe I should be maintaining my balanced diet when I'm away from home as well, being careful about restaurant food. And I do use Airbnb over hotels and so on, but am I also cooking or making sure that I'm eating really healthy or plain foods, so that whole foods, so that I can really maintain my nutritional balance and so on. And of course, being careful about portion sizes. I'm sure there's lots of things. Food isn't the only thing. This is one that I personally struggle with. But there's lots of other things that can really affect your energy, like unsustainable working hours. Speaking first. I mean, that's actually draining for you. Maybe let other people speak first, and then you come in. And it's also more appealing as well for the people who are working for you, that are working with you, because they realize that you're listening. They want that you really want to hear what they have to say. And maybe instead of laughing at each other, maybe we can be laughing with each other. And maybe try to get out of those echo chambers. Maybe try to avoid the situation where you're feeling guilty when you're doing nothing. That's something that I suffer from myself. Okay. Some more positive ones, lots of positive things. Maybe minimizing your time with toxic people. Drinking more water, a simple one that my son gives out to me about a lot. Doing what energizes you, doing what relaxes you. And maybe for me, that might be like getting back in touch with nature, for example, doing kind gestures periodically. And also kind of picking up on fads and brown stuff, and being able to kind of see the humor of that, and really trying to be present in the now. Really, if you can at all, meditate in your own way. You don't have to be a Buddhist or anything to kind of do all this kind of, you can meditate in your own way, even just kind of focusing on your breathing, and maybe just keeping in touch with your friends and your family members regularly, not forgetting these people, remembering what's important in your life, so that you maintain that energy as an executive. So these are the 5 themes. And some of the principles behind energy levels would include looking after yourself so that you can serve others, inspiring yourself, having a sense of humor, being physically fit, having proper nutrition, and having slack time so that you get time to be creative. And also, maybe if you're seen to be doing that as well, it's kind of gives your team, gives them the flexibility to see that this is something that you really like, and you'd like to see them doing the same, to improve the creativity in your team, from your team as well. So these are the 5 themes: humane environment, value and decision making, happy people, happy customers, improving the flow of value through the organization, and maintaining energy levels. And I maintain that if you try to find your own path through these, you can use Xagility, you can use some other way if you want to. In Xagility, we deal directly with these. We have e-learning on every single one of the behaviors. What are the triggers? What do you do about those triggers, and how could you respond a little bit differently? We give some examples of alternative behaviors, but the trick really is not in just intellectually getting them. It's in actually doing these things. So there's also a support network as well. And so being part of a cohort where you're kind of reporting back to each other and, kind of regressions of behaviors that you had in the past month, and for example, and how that felt and how you want to get better as an executive. So you can feel more inspired yourself and unlock more organizational agility as well. These are all experiments that need to be redone in your environment, and we will be collecting data on these. You don't have to share the data if you don't want to, but if you want to come in and measure, we can assess what's going on and help you to decide what the next right thing might be to do. Do the next right thing, as Dave Snowden would say. Borrowed that expression was borrowed from the movie Frozen 2, where when Anna was stuck in a cave or something like that, and she wanted to figure out, she was really in trouble trying to figure out what to do, and it was do the next right thing. So which is what Cynefin, one of the underpinning frameworks to all of this, is as well. Do the next right thing. Use that compass to try and figure out what we should do next. So they're the 5 themes, and there's lots of messiness in all of this. We need to be sustainable. We need to find a path that's sustainable for you. It needs to work for you. And we also need to think about what's the cost of inaction. So you might think, yeah, okay, John, I heard what you said, and we're managing fine. We're buying Agile in a box. We're getting safe, or we're getting whatever your flavor of the month is, and we're getting consulting firm XYZ in. And that's all very well, but essentially that's kind of like buying Agile in a box. I put it to you that the cost of inaction, or poor action, or delayed action, and I've seen this myself, would include the following: exhausted people, your people being exhausted, and powerful people that you hired there are still wonderful people, but have become powerless, they become helpless. Apathy kicks in, people start giving up, they start leaving. It's difficult to actually hire people. It's difficult to keep people that you've hired, really good people. And despite your efforts to cut costs, your costs are actually going up, your revenues are going down. And either you as an executive or your organization could get deleted. That's the real risk that I put to you of inaction here, or poor action, or delayed action. A lot of the elements in this talk were inspired by a number of people, and a lot of these people, I'm sure, don't agree with this talk, but I need to give them recognition for their inspiration to me, including Hayden Shaughnessy, who died over a year ago. Wonderful innovator and creator. But lots of people really contributed to this, and many other people as well who worked with me. And I just want to give them recognition for this. This has been 5 years of work, of interviews and experiments, learning the hard way how to unlock agility, to unlock executive agility. It's not just all about behaviors, it's much more messy than that. But these behaviors do give us insights, they're observable. We talk a lot about mindset, and the problem with mindset is it's not observable. I can't see how you think, but I can see how you behave. And ultimately, I'm much more interested in how you behave than how you think, because you might intellectually get something, but if you're not actually doing something to kind of back that up, it would indicate to me that you're not serious enough, or you're not ready, willing, or able enough yet. It might not be the right time. You might decide you're never ready for that level or whatever. That's fine. You can be, there are varying levels of agility in the different themes. We don't compare people. We don't try to have reports or anything like that kind of stuff in terms of who's at what level. This is all about you finding your own path. If you go through the e-learning and you go through the podcast and you discover actually you know lots of the earlier nuggets, you can find yourself fast forwarding, and that's absolutely not an issue. But you will find executive leaders like yourself and thought leaders much more prominent than me, uh, giving you nice nuggets about what they learned on their journey to become leaders, agile leaders, making a difference in their organizations. So here's the themes: value and decision making, humane environment, energy levels, slow value, happy people, giving you happy customers. And it's all about unlocking executive agility one behavior at a time. And this is a bit tongue-in-cheek here, but we really do need to delete it, or at least replace as many of these unhelpful behaviors for agility as possible. If you don't do that, you could end up getting deleted yourself. And I've actually seen people getting deleted. So really what we're trying to do is we're trying to unlock executive agility one behavior at a time. And I'm open for questions. I'll stay on for a couple of minutes to see if you got any questions. Thank you very much for your attention. So feel free to send me your questions or your comments. Thank you very much for coming. You can use the QR code on the top of the screen there to get my contact details. And if you have any follow-up questions, you can do it on social media, whichever channel you're on, or you can reach out to me directly on social media or my other contact points. Thank you. I'm going to give it another minute, and then I'll wrap it up for today. Thank you so much for your time. I'm John Coleman. I'm an agility chef, executive agility guide, and product manager. I'm a flight level coach, pro Kanban.org trainer, Scrum.org trainer, and less friendly Scrum trainer. I created Canplexity and Xagility. I'm a co-author of Kanban Guide, and I've got 2 podcasts, Xagility and Agility Island. I hope you check those out. And if you want to check out some of my writings on InfoQ, one example is the most recent one is on sizing and forecasting in Scrum, which is under Culture and Methods blogs. But there's also one, Why You Might Need an Agility Island, which was in June of this year. And I see that as an adoption approach. So check out those papers as well if you're interested. Okay, I don't see any questions at the moment, so thank you so much for tuning in, and I wish you all the best and see you again soon, hopefully.